By now you're probably thinking, okay, that's just a little weird. Yeah, hold on to that thought for about 10 more seconds, because from here on out, things go from kind of strange to wait. Who came up with this real fast? You're about to see things that sound like they belong in action movies, horror films, even sci-fi, except they actually happened. And the most dangerous part, you'll slowly get used to it. At some point, you stop asking, is this even real? And start going, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And that right there is when logic officially clocks out. All right, let's get into it. Trust me, the first one is already enough. Story 1. The warrior who disappeared behind his horse. Imagine you're aiming at a warrior, and right as you pull the trigger, he just vanishes. Not a ninja, not a magician. He simply slides off to the side of a galloping horse. Yeah, physics just said good luck with that. For the Comanche, this was not a trick. It was real combat skill. They could hang alongside the horse's body, using it as a living shield, controlling direction, and staying ready to strike back. Meanwhile, you're trying to hit a target that goes out of meta every 2 seconds. Sounds like a Hollywood scene. Yeah, except there's no stunt double, no CGI, and definitely no insurance. And if you're thinking, okay, maybe they could only do that once or twice, nope. They did it constantly, like it was just another line on their resume. Short version, this is action movie physics, but in real life. And trust me, we're just getting started. Story 2. The man who coded his own language. Imagine one random day a guy just sits down and goes, yeah, I'm gonna create an entire writing system. Not a simple alphabet. A full system. Readable. Functional. The whole package. That man was Sequoia of the Cherokee. Here's the wild part, he couldn't read or write in any language, and still created the Cherokee syllabary, a system that could fully represent the spoken Cherokee language. And the craziest part? Within just a few years, most of the tribe learned how to read and write using it. Meanwhile, other places were still relying on word of mouth, and they just unlocked literacy like it was a speed run. This man really said, fine, I'll build it myself. Sounds like a system hack. And honestly, it kind of was. But if you think everything they did was this clean and impressive, yeah, not exactly. Because next, things start getting a little harder to explain. Story 3. Beauty standards, but a little too far. Every culture has its own idea of beauty. But this one is more like, okay, who approved this? In some tribes, they did not just style hair or use makeup, they went straight to redesigning the shape of a baby's head. Using boards or bindings, they would gently but consistently shape the skull to achieve what they saw as beautiful, high status, and elite. Sounds like a character customization upgrade. Except there is no undo button. Imagine growing up and realizing, oh, my head looks like this because my parents picked a preset before I could even roll over. Not a bad haircut, a full structural edit. And the surprising part, this used to be widely practiced and considered completely normal. Yeah, it sounds hard to believe, but of course it was real. And if you think this is already peak weird, just wait. Story 4. When tattoos go on your teeth. Tattoos are normal until they are on your teeth. Not stickers, not something temporary. We're talking about actual carvings etched directly onto the surface of the teeth. Yeah, this is where you pause for a second. In some tribes, this was not just about looks, it had spiritual meaning. They believed these markings could protect them from evil spirits or show social status. So your smile was not just for shining, it was also for low-key intimidating the room. Imagine you are having a completely normal conversation, and then someone smiles, and you realize their teeth have patterns like tiny pieces of artwork. At that point, you do not know whether to compliment it or take a respectful step back. Does it sound painful? Yeah, very. But for them, it was identity. It was belief. Short version, still a smile. Just a slightly terrifying addition. And if you think that was already intense, just wait. We're just getting started. Story 5. When pain becomes a prayer. What if pain wasn't something to avoid, but a way to connect with the spiritual world? Sounds like someone talking about the gym. Yeah, not quite. This is the sun dance. In this ritual, participants fast dance for long periods under the sun, and in some cases go through physical challenges that make you go, yeah, I'm gonna tap out early. But for them, this is not about showing toughness, it is about faith. It is about seeking guidance from something higher. Imagine losing your Wi-Fi, and someone tells you, no worries, just go stand in the sun and dance for a few days, you'll reconnect. Sounds completely unreasonable, right? But for them, that is exactly how you get signal. So basically, it is like spiritual Wi-Fi, no password needed, just a very high pain tolerance. And if you think every belief system works like this, not exactly. Story 6, Dream Filters, Ancient Edition. Imagine being able to filter out nightmares before they even wake you up. No app, no updates. Just hang a dream catcher above your bed and call it a night. In some tribal cultures, dream catchers are made with a circular frame, web-like threads and feathers. The idea, bad dreams get caught in the web while good dreams just slide through and gently reach you. Basically a spam filter, but for your brain while you sleep. Sounds pretty chill, right? Until you think about it for a second, where exactly are all those trapped nightmares? Sitting? Yeah, let that one marinate. Still, it's a pretty smart concept, a way to protect your mind without meds or modern tech. So in short, ancient sleep technology. Simple, elegant, slightly unsettling if you think too hard about it. And trust me, it gets even creepier from here. Story 7, dolls that are not for playing. These are not toys. At least, not the kind you are thinking of. In some tribes, these dolls are not for kids to cuddle with. They are meant to represent spirits, sometimes even believed to have something inside them. They are made very carefully, every detail carrying meaning. Not something you buy because it looks cute, but something used to connect with the spiritual world and receive protection. Sounds deep, right? Until you imagine being alone and your room lights off, and a few of these friends are sitting there, silent, watching you. Not moving, not speaking, just existing. And suddenly your brain goes, yeah, I'm not turning my back on that. Not exactly a horror movie, but definitely not sleep-tight energy either. So yeah, still dolls, just a completely different level. And if you think their beliefs stop there, not even close. Story 8. What if humans didn't come from above, but from below? What if our origin story was not from the sky, not even evolution the way you learned it, but from underground? According to Hopi belief, humans once lived in a world beneath the earth before emerging to the surface. So instead of coming down, we came up. Yeah, plot twist. A completely different spawn point than what you expected. Sounds like a sci-fi movie, right? But for them, this is a way of explaining existence, life cycles, and a deep connection to the earth itself. Imagine growing up thinking I didn't come from somewhere far away. I came from right beneath where I'm standing. Simple idea, but also kind of mind-blowing. It flips the entire origin story on its head. So yeah, same question, completely different answer. And if you think animals are just animals, not even close. Story 9, animals with their own society. Imagine animals are not just animals, but have their own full-on society. Like you go to work, they go to work. You have drama, they have drama. You think you're the main character. They're like, yeah, sure, keep thinking that. In the beliefs of some tribes like the Cree, animals are not below humans. They have spirits, they have their own world, and most importantly, they're watching you, not in a horror movie way, but also not completely not creepy. Imagine you're out hunting, and somewhere out there's a whole animal council evaluating you. Is this guy cool? Does he respect the rules? Suddenly, you're not the one in control anymore. You're just another participant. Short version, maybe we're not the main character after all. And if you think things are going to stay this calm, yeah, not really. Story 10, cameras, but make it Stone Age. No Wi-Fi, no cameras, no tracking apps, just rocks. Sounds like the worst surveillance system ever, right? Yeah, that's what you'd think. But in some tribes there was a belief in tracking stones, rocks placed in specific spots that could signal when animals had passed through. Like, imagine inventing a camera trap, and then just skipping the entire technology part. According to them, these stones would react in some way to movement nearby. So you're out hunting, staring at a rock going, yeah, this one's telling me something walked by. No notifications, no alerts, just vibes, an experience. And somehow, it worked in its own way, which is the part that really makes you pause. So yeah, a surveillance system, prehistoric edition. And when it comes to communication, they had even more interesting methods. Story 11, the language no one could decode. Imagine having a code that your enemies can hear, but cannot understand a single word. Not because they didn't try, but because they literally couldn't. During World War II, the US used Native American warriors, especially Navajo, as code talkers. They transmitted messages using their own language. And because that language was so complex with no widely used written system, it was nearly impossible to crack. So while the world was out there trying to break codes with machines, these guys just talked. Imagine intercepting enemy radio and hearing, what is this supposed to be? No hacking, no decoding, no user manual, just confusion. So yeah, real-life encryption, no tech, no computers, just a language the world couldn't understand. And the wild part? It worked. And here's the twist. Not every kind of fighting is about violence. Story 12, winning a kill without killing. Sounds backwards, right? But for some tribes like the Crow, victory was not about taking down your opponent. It was about getting close enough to touch them, then leaving safely. That was called counting coup. Picture this in the middle of a battlefield instead of attacking. You run straight at your enemy, tap them lightly with your hand or a stick, then turn around and walk away like nothing happened. Sounds like trolling. Yeah, and that is exactly the point. Because that move proves you had the courage to approach your enemy without needing to kill them. It is basically saying, I just didn't need to. Think of it as the war version of winning with pure confidence. Short version, disrespect, damage. And honestly, that hits harder. And if you think every tribe could be easily defeated, yeah, not so fast. Story 13, the tribe that never surrendered. Imagine a war that lasts for years, and you still refuse to lose. No treaties, no white flags, no concept of surrender. That was the Seminole. They lived deep in the swamps of Florida, places their enemies were not familiar with, could not adapt to, and honestly, did not even want to stay in. They used guerrilla tactics, moving fast, striking, then disappearing. Basically hit and run over and over again. Like playing a game where your opponent just refuses to stay in one place. The US military tried again and again to force them to submit. But here is the result: they never officially surrendered. Imagine facing a team you cannot defeat, cannot catch, and cannot make quit. Short version, it is not that they could not lose, they just refused to. Built different, for real. And when they fought, things got even more intense. Story 14, weapons that literally threw fire. Yes, actual fire. Not movie effects, not some trick. Real burning projectiles. In some battles, warriors would tie together dry grass or other flammable materials, set them on fire, and throw them at their enemies. Sounds simple, until you're the one on the other side watching something on fire fly straight at you. The goal was not just damage, it was chaos. Smoke, flames, light everywhere. Confusion kicks in instantly, like you're in a normal fight, and suddenly someone activates boss fight mode. Imagine getting ready for battle, and someone goes, you know what? Let's add fire. Yeah, that escalated real fast. So yeah, sounds medieval, but completely real. Medieval, but make it real life. And the wild part, they didn't always communicate with fire. Sometimes they had way more subtle ways of doing it. Story 15, texting messages with smoke. Everyone can send messages, but what about sending them with smoke? Before phones, Wi-Fi, or 4G, some tribes used smoke signals to communicate over long distances. By creating columns of smoke with different shapes and rhythms, they could send specific messages from danger warnings to gathering signals. Sounds simple, but it was not random at all. Every pattern meant something, and if you did not know how to read it, it was just smoke. Imagine being miles away, seeing a few smoke signals and going, okay, something's happening. No notifications, no signal bars, just eyes, an experience. So yeah, ancient texting, no battery, no connection needed. And somehow, it worked. No signal needed. And when it comes to survival, they had methods that might surprise you even more. Story 16, parenting, nature edition. Modern parenting comes with the full combo. Diapers, wipes, creams, even apps reminding you when to change everything. Back then, 100% nature mode. In some tribes, they used dried moss as diapers for babies. Yeah, sounds like an extreme DIY project. But honestly, it makes sense. Moss is soft, absorbent, and everywhere. No store runs, no online orders. Just step outside, and you've got supplies. Imagine changing a diaper and thinking, yep, I picked this up from the forest like 3 minutes ago. Weird a little, effective. Surprisingly, yes, and the best part, fully biodegradable. No plastic, no waste, no guilt. So yeah, eco-friendly, before it was even a trend. And if you think they were only creative with parenting, not even close. They used pretty much everything around them. Story 17, nothing goes to waste. Nothing gets thrown away. No, I'll deal with it later. When survival is the goal, everything has value, especially when resources are not always available. In places like the Arctic, wood is basically a luxury, so the Inuit looked at what they did have and used it fully. Whale bones, something others might see as leftovers, became tools, weapons, even building materials. Imagine looking at a massive skeleton and going, yeah, I can work with this, and then turning it into knives, hooks, or the frame of a shelter. No Amazon, no hardware store, just you, your environment, and creativity. So yeah, this is survival on a different level. Not just using what you have, but turning it into exactly what you need. Real survival creativity. And it wasn't just animal bodies, even the ground itself helped them survive. Story 18, waterproofing. Before technology even existed, waterproofing today, easy. Buy some sealant, watch a tutorial, call it a day. Back then, no how-to videos, no tool stores, and somehow, they still figured it out. Some coastal tribes like the Chumash used natural tar seeping from the ground, basically ancient asphalt, to coat their boats. The result, boats that didn't just float, they were strong enough to travel far, fish trade, even explore. Sounds like a DIY project, but with zero room for error. Because if you mess it up, you find out real fast, in the middle of the ocean. Imagine sitting in a wooden boat sealed with natural tar thinking, yeah, hopefully this works. And somehow, it didn't just work, it worked really well. So yeah, waterproofing. Before technology was even a thing. DIY genius for real. And it wasn't just their tools, the way they lived was just as flexible. Story 19, an entire village. Packed in a few hours. Imagine moving houses. But it's not just your house, it's the entire village. No moving trucks, no delivery service, just you, your family, and everything you own, on your back or on a horse. For some tribes, this was completely normal. They lived a nomadic lifestyle, meaning they could set up camp quickly and pack it all up just as fast. Homes were designed to be assembled and taken down easily. Belongings were minimal but enough. Basically minimalist living. But not because it was trendy, because it was necessary. Imagine you just finished setting up your place, maybe even hung up a lamp, and someone goes, yeah, we're leaving tomorrow. No drama, no attachment, just movement. Sounds exhausting, right? But for them it was flexibility, adaptation, a way to survive with the environment, not against it. So yeah, ultimate nomad mode, and if you think that's already tough, wait until the weather becomes the final boss. Story 20, walking on snow. Without sinking. Have you ever stepped onto deep snow? One step and you sink like the ground just betrayed you. Not fun. Now imagine having a way to walk on snow without sinking. No high-tech gear, no Pro Max boots, just a simple invention, snowshoes. Some tribes created these to spread out body weight, letting them move smoothly across snow like they were walking on solid ground. While everyone else is struggling, they're just like, yeah, casual walk. Sounds like a cheat code, right? Like you unlock terrain resistance off. And it's not just for walking. It helps with hunting, carrying supplies, surviving in conditions where most people would give up in 10 minutes. So yeah, real-life winter cheat code. And honestly, it works. But the most surprising part, it's not just how they survived. Story 21. What if America learned from them? What if part of the foundation of the United States was inspired by native tribes? Yeah. Plot twist. The Iroquois Confederacy already had a pretty advanced political system way early on. We're talking councils, laws, and decision-making based on consensus. Not whoever talks louder wins more, like sit down, talk it out, actually listen. And when the American founders were building the Constitution, they studied that system, learned from it. So before democracy became a buzzword, someone had already been doing it. Imagine being proud of your brand new idea, and someone goes, yeah, they figured that out a few hundred years ago. Yeah, that stings a little. So yeah, history has plot twists you don't see coming. And if you think leadership back then looked anything like today, hold on. Story 22. When women choose the leaders. Imagine a society where women don't just participate, they decide who leads. Not thanks for your input, energy, actual power to choose, and remove if needed. In some tribes like the Iroquois, women, especially clan mothers, were the ones selecting leaders. And if a leader started going off track, yeah, they could be replaced. No long-term job security if you're not doing the job right. Sounds familiar, like a performance review system. But no HR, just community and accountability. Imagine being a leader knowing, yeah, I got chosen, but I can get voted out anytime. That'll keep you humble real quick. So yeah, power wasn't permanent, and women had that influence way before it became a modern idea, ahead of its time, for real. And if you think human society is the only interesting part, not even close. Story 23. When gender was more than two options. What if gender was not limited to just male and female? For some tribes, the answer was simple. Yeah, that's completely normal. The concept of two-spirit describes people who carry both masculine and feminine elements in their identity. They were not seen as different in a negative way. In fact, they were often respected and held special roles in the community, from healing to spiritual guidance. Imagine living in a society where being yourself doesn't require a full explanation. No complicated labels, no constant debates, just acceptance. Sounds like a modern conversation, right? Here's the twist: this has existed for hundreds of years. So yeah, some ideas we think are new have actually been around for a long time, centuries ahead, for real. And if you think power worked the same way back then as it does now, not exactly. Story 24. The more you give, the richer you are. Sounds backwards, right? While most of us are busy trying to collect more and more, some tribes flip the script completely. The more you give, the more respected you become. In ceremonies like potlatch, people would give away their wealth, valuable items, food resources, not because they had too much, but because that was the display of status. It's like saying, I don't need to keep it to prove I'm rich. I can give it away. Imagine throwing a party where instead of receiving gifts, you hand them out to everyone. And whoever gives the most, yeah, they win. Logic flipped upside down, but somehow it works because it builds reputation, trust, connection. So yeah, power wasn't about how much you kept. It was about how much you could let go. Reverse logic, but makes a little too much sense. And sometimes, power showed up in even more unexpected ways. Story 25. The leader who barely spoke. Imagine a leader who almost never talks. No long speeches, no endless meetings, no let me explain this again. Sounds like a dream, right? In some northeastern tribes, certain leaders guided decisions, but rarely spoke in public. They listened, took in every opinion, then made decisions with very few words, like the quietest person in the room, being the one everyone actually watches, not because they had nothing to say, but because when they did speak, it mattered. Imagine a meeting where everyone's arguing and one person stays silent the whole time, then drops one sentence at the end and everyone just nods. That's not lack of communication, that's control. So yeah, sometimes power isn't about talking more. It's about knowing exactly when to speak. Silence equals sign power. And if you think things are about to go back to normal now, yeah, not really. Story 26. Settling conflict with a game. Imagine two groups in serious tension, and instead of fighting, they go, yeah, let's settle this with a game. Sounds like ancient esports, right? In some tribes, games like stickball were not just for fun, they were used to resolve real disputes. Not just bragging rights. The outcome could actually affect decisions for the whole community. And when we say game, we're talking hundreds of players, full chaos, heavy contact, and definitely no gentle referees. Basically sports, but with stakes like a high-level meeting. Imagine stepping onto that field knowing, okay, if we lose, this is bigger than just a game. Pressure just went up by 10x, so yeah, still a game, but very real consequences. Stakes were real, and if you think endurance was just a side detail, not even close. Story 27. Dancing. With no pause button. No breaks, no timeout, no one saying, hey, can I grab some water real quick? Just dancing. For days. In some tribes, community ceremonies could last for multiple days straight with music, movement, and nearly everyone involved. This was not a party for fun situation. This was real ritual with deep spiritual meaning. But imagine you joining in. Day 1, energy high vibes. Good smiling. Day 2, things start getting a little blurry. Day 3, you're not even sure if you're dancing, or your body just autopiloted the whole thing. No cool down, no, I'll skip today. Just keep going. Sounds like extreme cardio. Yeah, but for them it was connection, belief, community. So yeah, cardio nightmare, but with purpose. And if you think their communication methods were already normal enough, yeah, get ready. Story 28. Texting night with beads. Texting today. Easy. Type a few words, hit send, done. Now imagine having to write a message using beads. In some tribes, they used strings of beads with different colors and patterns to communicate. Not for decoration, actual communication. Every color, every arrangement meant something specific, from announcements to messages to important information between groups. So basically, you're sending a message, but instead of words, you're using patterns. Imagine receiving one and having to read it like art. Okay, what does this color mean? What's this pattern saying? No emojis, but way more complex. This wasn't just communication, it was art and language combined. Art plus language, for real. And when it comes to value, their version of money gets just as interesting. Story 29. Money, made of shells. Money. We all know it. Cash coins, cards now, even digital wallets. But there was a time when money came from something you could literally pick up on the beach. In some tribes, shells, especially rare and beautiful ones, were used as currency. Not just for fun trades, real transactions, goods, disputes, even land. Sounds like paying rent with decorations, right? Yeah, but not all shells were equal. They had to be rare, recognized, valued by the community. So this wasn't random. It was a full economic system, just with a very coastal aesthetic. Imagine buying something and the seller goes, "Yeah, that'll be 10 premium shells," and you just nod like fair enough. So yeah, a real economy, just built from nature. Ancient economy, for real. And from here, things start getting a little darker. Story 30, buried twice. You get buried once and that's it, right? Yeah, not exactly. For some tribes, the end game comes with a second round, a second burial. At first, the person is buried temporarily. After some time, the remains are brought back, prepared again, and then buried a second time in a more formal ceremony. Yeah, that moment where you go, okay, I was not ready for part 2. But for them, this is how the soul's journey is completed, from transition to fully settled. Imagine seeing death not as an off switch, but as a multi-step process, like a software update, version 1, then version 2, final release. It's not meant to be scary, it's about respect, connection, a deeper way to stay linked with those who have passed. So yeah, unsettling, but meaningful. Unsettling, but meaningful. And finally, there's one more thing that might completely change how you see yourself. Story 31. One life, many names. You probably think you're one single person with one name from birth all the way into adulthood, right? Yeah. For some tribes, it was not that simple. In those communities, a person could have multiple names throughout life, each one reflecting a different stage and achievement or a different version of who they were. When you changed, grew, or reached something important, you could unlock a new name. Sounds like leveling up in a game where every new level comes with a different title. Not because the old name was wrong, but because you had become someone new. Imagine not being trapped inside one fixed identity. No, this is just who I've always been. More like I'm still becoming. So yeah, you are not just one version of yourself. You are many versions. Identity evolves. And once you start thinking that way, everything really does change. At this point, it's pretty clear. These stories are not just weird. They show a completely different way of seeing the world, and honestly, sometimes it even makes more sense than how we think. Maybe the real question isn't how different they are, but why we always assume we're the normal ones. Yeah, a little uncomfortable, right? Same here. So let me ask you honestly, which one surprised you the most? But don't pick the craziest one. Pick the one that made you go, wait, this is actually real. Drop it in the comments. And if you made it this far and your brain is still functioning, yeah, hit like